Minister, thank you so much for speaking to Bloomberg. We're delighted to come to Madrid to see you here.
It's a pleasure.
Give me a sense of what the mood is like out there. It seems that maybe we're a lot more optimistic about Spain than 6 months ago, but we're a lot more pessimistic about the rest of the world.
Well, if we start with Spain, really the situation, is much better than it was not only 6 months ago, but especially, in comparison with the situation that we had 3 years ago. In the first half of the year, the Spanish economy has been growing close to 4%, with a lot of employment creation, without inflation tensions at all. Inflation is in the negative territory in Spain. And simultaneously, the evolution of exports, the evolution of consumption, the evolution of investment is quite positive. Even if you look at the soft data, sentiment indicators are also in an all-time situation, even not better than at the beginning of the crisis, but even if you compare, these indicators with the situation we had 10, 15 years ago. So it's quite an impressive turnaround. I think that it has to do with several factors, but in particular with the reforms implemented by the Spanish government. And I think that the turnaround has been quite impressive now.
Given the upward trend, do you think that you will actually beat your forecasts for growth?
Yes, now our forecast is that the growth rate in 2015 is going to be 3.3%. In the first half of the year, we were very close to 4%. The third quarter, I think that the growth rate is going to be quite similar to the first 2 quarters of the year. So I think that we are on track to achieve our goals.
And you were talking about reforms. You're confident that this growth is because of structural reforms and not only because of a weak euro, a weak oil price?
Well, there is one very clear element, is that Spain is outperforming its peers in the Eurozone. So I think that there are specific particular elements, particular decisions that have an influence on the evolution and the performance of the Spanish economy. I think that when you look at the evolution, for instance, of credit flows, new credit flows, when you look at, for instance, the evolution of the labor market, when you look at the evolution of exports, Spanish exports, there are specific factors, particular factors that explain why Spain is outperforming the peers. We are growing much faster than the European average. There are tailwinds, the decline in oil prices, the measures taken by the ECB, the depreciation of the euro are positive factors that are pushing up the growth rate of the Spanish economy. But this is having an impact all over the Eurozone, not only in Spain.
But how do you explain then the stubbornly high unemployment? Unemployment is very high, productivity is also very low.
Well, you have to bear in mind that the crisis in Spain was extremely profound, extremely long, extremely painful, and had a very clear impact in the evolution of the labor market. In 2009, the Spanish economy lost 1.5 million jobs. And I think that it had to do with the regulation of the Spanish economy, the labor market regulation, and also it had to do with the weight of construction in the Spanish economy. Construction is a labor-intensive industry. When things go well, it has a very clear impact on the evolution of labor market dynamics. But when the situation turns around, then destruction of jobs is very rapid. So this had a very clear impact on the evolution of the Spanish economy. But all in all, what I have to say is that the peak of the unemployment rate was reached 2 years ago, close to 27%, and now we are clearly declining in terms of unemployment. Our projection is that between 2014 and 2015, we will be able to create more than 1 million jobs.
How? Is it middle-class jobs?
Well, it's everywhere. It's in the service sector, even in the industry. It's related to export activities. We have to do more. We cannot be complacent. That's for sure. But I think that the direction, the trend is totally different than it was only 2 years ago. You have to bear in mind and to take into consideration that in 2012 the Spanish economy suffered a recession a very profound recession with a drop in activity of more than 2%. The unemployment destruction process was also very deep. Layoffs were in the area of 700,000, and we had a lot of imbalances, and there were a lot of uncertainties about the evolution of the Spanish economy in the banking industry, even in the fiscal side. Now the situation, I think that we have corrected many of these imbalances, and now the Spanish economy, despite this problem that we have, a very clear problem, that this is not only an economic problem, it's also a social problem, a political problem in the labor market. I think that now Spain is a trustworthy economy.
Public debt is very high. The IMF is asking for more structural reforms, but investors see you as really the poster child of the reforms that worked. How do you reconcile the two? Are the IMF too harsh?
No, I don't think so. The IMF, they have updated, the figures for Spain. They have said that we are going to grow this year above 3%, and next year, will be, the faster growing economy of the Eurozone. And the role of the IMF is to say that there are vulnerabilities in the Spanish economy, and we accept that. We have, the level of leverage of the private sector in Spain is very high, despite the fact that we have been deleveraging quite rapidly over the last 3-4 years. We have also to continue with, the transformation of the small and medium corporations network in Spain. We need to increase the scale of the SMEs. We need to continue, making efforts, to flexibilize and to make, markets much more adaptable. But I think that the situation, the platform is totally different than it was 3 years ago. So the future is much brighter than it was 3 years ago.
What's your main concern for Spain? If you look at the Eurozone crisis, for the moment, it's abated. You're facing elections. You, of course, still have Catalonia. Is there one thing that you worry about, the strength of the euro, the volatility of oil prices, that may actually scupper the recovery?
When you look at the fundamentals of the Spanish economy, I think that transformation has been quite impressive. But I think that there are several factors that might derail the process. No, I think that the main factor, and this has been pointed out by the IMF, is reverting the reforms. Reverting the reforms is the main risk for the Spanish economy.
Is it a political risk?
Well, it's a political risk. We have elections in Spain at the end of the year. Nevertheless, I think that the Spanish society is mature, is responsible. They know perfectly the situation we were only 3 years ago and the situation that we are now. And despite the political difficulties that we have to confront, despite that there are geopolitical risks, I think that the future for the Spanish economy is much brighter than it was, especially because we have corrected many of the macro imbalances that we suffered for a long period of time. Now Spain is perceived as a competitive economy. We have a current account surplus that this year is going to be close to 2% of GDP. The property bubble, has come, the bursting of the bubble has come to a halt. When you start to look at the evolution of prices in the property sector, there are some segments that you start to see that there is a slight increase in prices. The situation of the banking industry has nothing to do with the situation that we had 3 years ago. And even this is perceived, and this has been especially, relevant in terms of new flows of credit. Credit is on the rise in Spain for households, for SMEs, and and this is compatible with the process of deleveraging. We continue to deleverage in the property sector, and simultaneously, for competitive Spanish corporations and healthy Spanish households, there are flows of new credit that are on the rise. So I think that the process is going on quite smoothly, quite well. And if you look at the fiscal side, this year our fiscal deficit is going to be 4.2%, and next year our target is to go below 3%, the threshold.
And that will be achieved?
I think so. For instance, on the fiscal side this year, tax revenues are growing rapidly. We have savings, in unemployment payments. We have also savings in interest payments, and the financial costs of the Spanish Treasury have come down quite rapidly. So we are on track.
Give me a sense of the euro. How much of it is a worry if it continues going up? And actually, it surprised a lot of people in the market. Is there an ideal level for euro dollar for your exports?
Well, you do not have. I think that we are, now the present value of the euro, that is 1.15, 1.10, 1.15. I think that we are reaching a sort of equilibrium.
So 115 would be fair value?
Yes, I think that is fair value. Well, that will depend on the evolution of monetary policies, different performances in the different areas of the world economy. But now I think that 115, for instance, for Spain, we notice and we realize that with this, exchange rate, our exports are growing at a rate of 5%. We are competitive. And simultaneously, I think that, sometimes markets, perfectly that overshoot.
Right.
And in the case, especially in the case of commodities, in the case of currencies, I think that these overshootings are quite real, no, sometimes. But my impression is that, the present level of the exchange rate of the euro, I think that is a fair value.
What happens if it goes higher? So you grow exports at 5% at 115. If it were at 125, do you have an immediate impact on exports? Well,
you have to bear in mind that 60% of our exports go to the Eurozone, and that only 18 months ago, the value of the euro was 140 vis-a-vis the dollar. So, and the Spanish exports were growing under those circumstances. Well, with 115, our life is much easier than with an exchange rate of 140 with a much more appreciated euro. But now Spain is competitive, and I think that is competitive because, the evolution of unit labor costs in comparison with our peers in Europe, makes Spain, a very attractive place for exports.
And you say, of course, that Spain is competitive, and we see a lot of appetite from investors to possibly buy more Spanish bonds. Is there anything in the pipeline from now until the end of the year, maybe a longer maturing 30-year bond, inflation-linked?
Well, there are some elements. The first one is that we have, completed almost 75% of the gross issuance program that we projected. So, we are quite advanced, and we have made a lot of progress. And simultaneously, in line with, the decline in the fiscal deficit, for instance, the net issuance of Spain will be reduced further. We started with a target of 55 billion euros. Afterwards, it was reduced to 53 billion euros. And now, I can announce that, the net issuance will be 51 billion euros. This is, in parallel with the evolution of the fiscal revenues and the evolution of the fiscal deficit. So Spain is reducing the net issuance for 2015, no? And I think that this is a good indicator about, how committed we are with respect to the fiscal targets.
So there's nothing coming up. If I'm an investor,
if you're an
I want to
investor,
get in
well,
Spain,
I think that
go?
we are to issue less than we announced. We have lengthened the maturity of our debt. We have taken advantage, the drop in interest rates. Well, but we are very predictable in terms of issuance. Now, so the only piece of news that I have is that we are going to reduce the net issuance of the Spanish Treasury.
Talk to me a little bit about the bank. So you say that credit is available, so presumably you're happy with the way they're lending. Bankia shares have been down quite significantly. Why not sell it outright?
We think that there is value, and I think that if we wait a little bit longer, we will have more value. You have to bear in mind that we have to recover, the capital injection that we made in Bankia and that we made in other former saving banks, no. So I think that Bankia is a good indicator about the evolution of the Spanish economy, in the sense that it was the paradigm of the problems of the Spanish economy 3 years ago, and now it's a healthy institution with a very good management. That it has, it's going to make a lot of money this year with, that is on target, that has restructured and reduced, the excess capacity that it had only 3 years ago. And I think that, it's a good image. I would say that it's a proxy of the evolution of the Spanish economy.
But they have pressure. I mean, there's pressure. If you look at the share price, there's
Yes.
incredible pressure, right? So you're holding on to it.
Yes, we are holding out because we believe that if we wait a little bit longer, we will be able to obtain a better price and to recover more of the capital injections that we carried out 3 years ago.
How do you see Catalonia? If you look at the bond prices for Catalonia, they've, almost, I think, tripled in 5 months.
Yes, well, Catalonia is, you know, perfectly that we have regional elections at the end of this month. These are regional elections that are very important because sometimes we forget that Spain is the most decentralized country all over the industrial world, of the OECD. And the Parliament of Catalonia and the regional government of Catalonia are very, very relevant for the Catalan society because they are responsible for education, for healthcare, even for security, for safety. They have a lot of functions and a lot of responsibilities. So these are very important. These are very important regional elections. No? If we go to the issue of independence, what I have to say is that first of all, you know, independence is illegal according to the Spanish Constitution. And there is another element: is that if you look at you know, the treaties in the Union, well, I do not see Catalonia out of the Union, and I do not see Catalonia out of the Eurozone. Catalonia, you know, has been one of the most pro-European regions in Spain. And secondly, and I think that this is much more relevant, Catalonia has always been part of Spain. You cannot understand Spain without Catalonia, and you cannot understand Catalonia without the rest of Spain. So the Catalan society is mature, is responsible, is rational, and they know perfectly that the future is much brighter in Spain than outside Spain.
So investors are being irrational?
Yes, the investors are rational. You know, I deal with a lot of investors, and they consider that you know, the scenario of independence of any region in Spain is an irrational scenario. So they do not take it into consideration, and it's not having an impact on the market now.
The G20 is coming up, and investors are nervous. I'm personally not sure what they're nervous about. Is it China? Is it because they think that China will actually fall off a cliff? Or is it just a correction that's needed on the markets? How do you perceive the world right now?
Well, I suppose that in the G20 we'll discuss in depth, you know, the situation and the different drivers of growth. No? And my impression is that growth globally is mediocre, is uneven, is fragile, and you know, this always creates jitters in the markets, no, and volatility and unease. No? My perception about China is that China has been one of the main sources of growth globally, and now China is you know, in a transition period. China grew at a rate above 10% for a very long period of time, and now they are converging towards a growth rate that is going to be in the area of 5–6%. This has to be sustainable over time, and China will make its contribution. But simultaneously, we will not see, you know, the impact of you know, a 10% growth rate of the Chinese economy.
But 5–6% is not bad. There's nothing more sinister. We're not talking about 3% growth. We're not talking about things that is dark, very dark.
Yes, well, you know, you have also that you have to bear in mind also that you know, this transition also you know, covers the action of the public powers. I think that you know, the Chinese authorities have taken the decision to interfere less in the private sphere and in the private economy. Something that is evident with respect to the stock market, something that will have an impact on the evolution of the exchange rate. And this is going to have, you know, spillover effects on the rest of emerging markets. So, all in all, you know, in the world economy, when you have, you know, transformational mood of such an important economy as the Chinese economy, well, it has an impact. In the short term, markets overreact, overshoot, but I think that in the medium term, that will be, you know, positive for the world growth and for the world trade.
And what does volatility mean to the Spanish economy? When you look at, for example, the price of oil, right? You've benefited, and I don't know how much the impact of that is. When it spikes up, goes down, it's very difficult to read.
For us, it's quite relevant because, for instance, you know, we import the majority of the commodities, especially, you know, in the case of energy. For instance, you know, in the case of Spain, we have had very important savings. Savings, you know, coming from or derived from the decline in oil prices in Spain will account more than 10 billion euros. This is going to be felt in the balance of payment. This is going to be also is going to have an impact on the headline inflation. This also have an impact in the real disposable income of households and the cost, the structure of Spanish corporations. So, for Spain, it's a gain situation. The decline in oil prices, and I think that is behind the acceleration of Spanish growth that we have seen over the last quarters. So in that respect, it's positive. There are other elements that are not so positive. For instance, our exposure to China is not very relevant because our exports account for less than 2% of the total volume of Spanish exports. But you have to look a little bit wider, and the slowdown of the Chinese economy is going to have spillover effects on other emerging markets. And for Spain, for instance, the exposure to Latin America is quite relevant, and that would be the detrimental part of the slowdown of the Chinese economy. But with respect to commodities, I think that the impact is going to be clearly positive, and it's something that we have started to feel in terms of growth rates now.
And you worry about central banks and this almost currency war or race to the bottom, whatever you want to call it.
Well, we have not reached a currency war at all. I think that that could be extremely preoccupying in my view.
Do you think it will come?
I don't think so. I think that, one thing is volatility in the stock market. Volatility in the stock market, in the Chinese equity market, is something that, is something that is difficult sometimes to understand, because there are a lot of interference from the government. But, a currency war is something of a different nature. It's a different animal. Sometimes, these beggar thy neighbor policies are extremely detrimental to everybody. Something that this territory should not enter at all, because a currency war is the prelude of a trade war. So I do not see. I think that the Chinese authorities understand perfectly the situation, and we should not repeat the mistakes that we made in the past during the times of the Great Depression. So I do not see it. I think that we saw a certain depreciation of the Chinese currency, of the yuan, but afterwards, this depression came to a halt. And currency movements are normal in life, but they cannot be led by political powers, because that could be extremely detrimental to the world economy.
Are you apprehensive of a Fed interest rate hike?
No, I think that it's a sign of normalization. I suppose that for market participants, this is something that is relevant. I think that the Fed hike has been announced and has been discounted. I think that a long time ago. But the day that the decision is taken, I suppose that it will create certain volatility. No, but I think that I have a lot of confidence on Janet Yellen. And there is something that we have to understand, is that we have to normalize the situation. The new normal cannot be zero interest rates. I know that we have a lot of difficulties. That liquidity is very relevant. We have ample liquidity all over the markets, but we cannot get used to living in a world with zero interest rates. That's not. I think that growth rates have to come from different variables than monetary policy.
And the markets understand that?
Well, the markets sometimes, markets overreact. I have said, but they will accept that. We have to normalize the situation. And I think that in terms of communication, the Fed is doing a very good job. The ECB is doing also a very good job. They understand perfectly what the volatility means for markets and for the real economy. But at the end of the day, there is a reality, that despite the fact that inflation rate is very low and inflation expectations are quite tempered, you cannot live forever in a world of zero interest rates.
What would you ask to your Chinese counterpart at G20? Well,
I think that he will explain the situation. He also, I suppose that they are crystal clear. In previous G20 meetings, they said very clearly, we cannot maintain forever growth rates above 10%. We have to converge to a new normal. The new normal is going to be growth rates in the area of 5-6%. The transitional period is going to be, difficult and might create volatility, but afterwards will be much more sustainable platform for future growth.
Do you worry more about the political situation in Greece and the fact that actually Mr. Tsipras may be the only one to be able to put a coalition together, or about the UK leaving the EU? Well,
with respect to Greece, I think that we reached, a good agreement for everybody. Greece will stay in the Eurozone, and, the agreement that we reached was with, with a nation, not with a concrete party. And you have to bear in mind that, the endorsement of the Greek Parliament was very ample. So I am totally sure that whatever the outcome of the elections, the new government, will stick to the compromises, and it will respect, the rules of the Eurozone. So I think that with respect to Greece, I feel confident. And with respect to the UK, well, I have to say that the UK is a very important economy for Europe, a very important country, not only in terms of size, but also in terms of influence. Always, I think that the Great Britain has applied the correct policies and the correct approach with respect to the policies in the Union, and I think that this qualitative effect and this qualitative component is something that sometimes we overlooked a little bit. It's not only the size of the UK economy, it's also the influence of the UK that is very positive for the Union. So the Spanish government is going to make a wholehearted effort to support the UK. We believe that the future of the UK is much brighter in the Union than outside the Union. It's up to the British citizens. But for us, for Spain, we are going to try to do our best to maintain the UK in Europe.
And one final question on the refugee crisis, because this is something that we talk about, and actually it's very difficult to see clarity. Right? What is the ideal solution, if there is any?
I think that we need a complete policy. In Spain, we have had, in the past, similar crises because we are very close to Africa. And, first of all, you have to deal with the humanitarian problem. But afterwards, I think that the solution is to stabilize the origin countries politically. And even, in the case of the Middle East, without stabilization, political stabilization, without, having enough peaceful frameworks, very difficult, to try to bring to a halt, this terrible situation that we are suffering now. Because, when you see, the images, it's quite impressive now since the end of the Second World War. I think that Europe has not seen something similar.
Minister, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. That's been a pleasure.